So, J. Ruud, what lovable book are we talking about today?
Well, Stacey Margaret Jones, I'll give you a hint. Arthur G. Dozier.
All right. Welcome to Between the Covers, where J. Ruud and I, Stacey Margaret Jones, two authors, talk about J. Ruud's carefully cultivated list of the 100 most lovable novels in the English language, one book at a time. So today I'm trying to guess the most lovable novel, and I need another hint, obviously.
Hint number 2, The White House. Not the White House.
Right.
The White House.
Have I read this book?
No.
Oh, okay.
However, you are familiar with it. Hint number 3, Elwood Curtis.
I don't know.
Well...
Wait, Elwood.
Yes?
Nickel Boys?
It is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead.
Awesome.
You are correct.
I would never have gotten it except we just saw the movie and my little archivist in my brain was screaming, I found it!
I found an Elwood back here.
Found the memory. Awesome. Okay, Nickel Boys. So...
The Nickel Boys.
The Nickel Boys, sorry. What...
As opposed to the movie, which is just called Nickel Boys.
Oh, that's an interesting...
I don't know if it's interesting.
Vive la différence. Vive la différence.
But it is a difference.
Okay, what year did Nickel Boys come out? What year was it published?
It was published in 2019.
Okay. And who else thinks this book is lovable? I guess it'd probably be easier to say who doesn't love it, but tell us. So one of the way that you started your list was you looked up a lot of lists, made a master list, and then
Master list from lists.
From lists. This is the part where if you drink every time we say list, you'll be drunk very fast. And then you read the books that you hadn't read and started building your own recommendations, 100 most lovable novels. What list is this book on? What lists?
Well, it's actually too recent to be on very many lists.
I wondered about that.
I just put it on here because I had read it and thought, well, this really is in many ways a lovable book.
Yes.
So let's put it on my list.
Who else loves this book?
Well, it did win the 1919 Kirkus Prize. It was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award. It was named on the Chicago Tribune's and Entertainment Weekly's and Time Magazine's Best Novels of the Decade for the 2010s. On the New York Times Reader's Choice list of the 100 best books of the 21st century, it was ranked as number 37. It also won Whitehead his second Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 2020.
Okay.
So here it is.
Lots of people love this book.
Yes.
So what was his first prize winner?
His first Pulitzer Prize winning novel, and the one that really made him a kind of household name, was The Underground Railroad.
Which we read aloud.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so he's repeat.
He's bona fide.
He's bona fide. That's from No Country for Old Men.
No,
yes.
it's for Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? I'm mixing up my Coen movies. Sorry.
You are.
Yeah, he's bona fide. Okay, so he's got credentials.
Yeah.
Let's say bona fides. All right, so can you rise to the challenge of the down and dirty summary, J. Ruud? This is where we really push you to be brief. If you'd had more time, you'd have written a shorter letter.
That's true. But I knew this question was coming since you
I ask it every time.
Every single week. So
it's only taken 26 episodes.
And I finally figured out, okay, maybe I should be ready for that question. This is the fictionalized story of two black teenage boys in Florida during the 1960s who are sent to a school that is actually a penal institution.
I'm putting air quotes around school.
Where, yes, I have them on my written copy.
I read your mind.
where the boys are systematically subjected to molestation, beatings, torture, and even murder by the guards and by the school's administrators.
All right. And okay, yes, you get the harps of glory. You did it. Well done. You prepared, and it paid off. Okay. This is interesting because I hadn't thought of it when we saw the movie recently, but it, of course, makes me think about the memoir by Charles Spencer about a very private school, because what is it about people and boys' schools that just draws the abusers out of their hidey holes? It's like, this is fiction, but based on there was a real...
It's a fictionalized version of the story of Florida's infamous Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys. Oh. That was the first clone.
Yeah, that was a little inside baseball if you have not read the book.
Well, even if you have read the book, but, I don't want you to get it on the first clue. So this real school for boys was opened in the Florida Panhandle town of Marianna in 1900, and it remained open until 2011. So it was doing these things for 111 years. It was run as a reform school by the Florida state government. But for years it had been the subject of allegations that boys sent to the academy were systematically subjected to these abuses, with the knowledge and even the supervision of the school's administrators.
Right.
When the Florida Department of Law Enforcement finally began an investigation into these allegations in 2010, after they've been getting these complaints for decades, it was clear that the charges were true. And the U.S. Department of Justice initiated additional investigations in 2011. The University of South Florida began forensic studies of bodies that were found in the sort of backyard where they buried the people that they'd killed. And they found scores of burial sites on the campus. And those contained the broken bodies of boys who'd been beaten to death.
Jeez.
At least 81 boys died at the site that they've...
81?
That they have recovered so far.
I mean, we don't want to talk about the true story the whole time. We want to talk about the book, but how did 81 boys go there and never come out and nobody noticed?
Well...
I mean, obviously people noticed, but the people who could do something didn't care?
Well, there's that. Also,
did they say they ran away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually that's what they would say. Many of the boys who ended up there were, a lot of them were guilty of petty crimes, but some were just called incorrigible, and so they were sent there. Some were orphans, and had nowhere else to go, so they were sent there. And those kind of boys had nobody on the outside.
Nobody was waiting
would
for
notice
them.
that they didn't come back.
So they were...
or they weren't that interested in them, so they just would...
Easy targets.
Go along with the, they ran away kind of thing.
Did Whitehead write the novel after the truth about this school came out, or was he working on it because the allegations were in the zeitgeist?
Well, yeah. It was 2011 when they began to look into the deaths there. He started writing the novel shortly after he'd finished Underground Railroad. Mm-hmm. And he had actually plans to write a different book, but he became aware of these things that had happened at this school. And he says that he thought, well, if they happened at this school, there must have been others.
Right.
And in the appendix and acknowledgments of the book, there's a list of schools that were like this one around, particularly in the South, in Arkansas, for instance. And it's listed there in the acknowledgments. But he says that he was kind of inspired to work on this because of what they were finding out, but also because of the early years of the first Trump administration.
Oh,
And
boy.
And reading about what was happening in these sort of concentration camps along the Mexican border.
Right.
That's what inspired him to write this novel.
Well, yeah, let's talk about why you put this novel on your list of lovable books, because it sounds harrowing.
Oh, it's not lovable in the sense that it's going to make you feel good.
Right. But I'm sensing that, like Underground Railroad, that it really is a page turner. Like that book was just completely engrossing. You could be in that world so completely. He creates something just so comprehensive in terms of a fictional experience, right?
Yeah.
So tell me more about why you put this on your list of lovable novels.
Well, it's very real. It makes you feel like the way it must have felt to be in that kind of a situation. It is a fast read.
Mm-hmm. How long is it?
It's only 224 pages.
Oh, wow. It is fast.
So you can read it fairly quickly. Yeah, so it's a good experience to read and to teach you something. So it's lovable in that way. It's a very disappointing book, though, in another way, because you get the feeling that Elwood is going to be all right.
No spoilers.
I'm not going to. Elwood, unlike the other almost all of the other boys that are there at the school, he was always a really good student. He always wanted to do the right thing. He had a job after school that he worked at.
His grandmother was his family, and she was very invested in him.
Yeah. And he had a teacher, history teacher at his high school named Mr. Hill, who was a freedom rider in the early 60s. And he encouraged Elwood, and he could see that Elwood was,
had a lot of promise.
Yeah, had a lot of promise. Had a kind of mind that could take on anything. And so he recommends that Elwood take classes at the nearby college, where black people could actually go at the time. And Elwood himself believes in Martin Luther King, and he has this record of Martin Luther King's speeches up through about 1964 that give him this belief that he is just as good as anybody else, that he can do anything that anybody else can do, as long as he does the work. And he believes that life is a meritocracy. He believes that if he works hard and does the right thing, he's going to get rewarded.
He believes in the American dream.
He believes in the American dream. And when he gets to this school, he believes that if he does the right thing here, if he doesn't, screw up like some of these other guys do, he's going to get out of there fairly quickly, and he's going to go back to his life. And he finds out fairly quickly that doesn't work in this school.
Because the school is corrupt.
Because the school is corrupt.
There's no meritocracy there.
There's no meritocracy, although he gets this lecture when they first reach there, the school, that here is what happens here. You have a kind of hierarchy. You come in as a grunt, and if you do well, you get promoted. Grub, okay.
I've seen the movie.
You get promoted to the next level, and then you get promoted to the next level, and then you can reach the level of ace, and you get these points by doing what you're told, by not causing trouble. And almost immediately, he comes across this situation where these three guys are beating up this other kid, and he steps in and tries to stop it. And he gets, they beat him up, and then he gets punished for it.
Right.
In fact, he gets punished by being beaten so badly in the White House that it takes weeks for him to get out of the infirmary.
Right.
And he has kind of permanent damage to his legs because of that beating. So, yeah, I mean, it's not lovable in the sense that
you feel great.
That you feel great reading it and that you feel like goodness has won.
Right.
Except there are, when you get to the second half of the book, there are scenes that alternate between the school and the adult Elwood, who's clearly made it alive and is making something of himself in the real world.
Right. Yeah. The movie obviously has its own kind of niche because of the way it's shot.
Yeah.
So when you have a character talking to another character, if a character's talking to Elwood, you see what Elwood sees literally. Like you can even see him looking at his own hand. And then it does switch back and forth. So sometimes you get to see Elwood if if Turner is talking to him, if you're in Turner's perspective. So that's a very interesting aspect of the movie. And I think talking about what you said about it helps you see what it's like not just see, but feel and be in. And it sounds like the filmmaker really took that to the next step in terms of translating the book to the movie, which is this book is meant for the reader to be able to put themselves in Elwood's place. So I'm going to put the viewer literally inside his eyeballs, right? Inside his perspective. Yeah. And it takes a minute to get used to, but you do get used to it very quickly, I think. And once you get the conceit of it, but it sounds very consistent with the novel, which is that it's a way in. If you read a news story about this, you can be appalled and, just horrified by the absolute evil of this. It's not the same as reading about it from one person's point of view. I do have a question. Is the novel first person, or what is the perspective of the novel? Do you remember?
I just read it again.
Is it I
don't think... No, I think it's third person.
Kind of a limited omniscient. You have somebody telling about Elwood, but it's limited maybe to Elwood and Turner's perspective.
Turner,
okay. Turner is another boy at the school.
Turner's the boy he makes friends with at the school, who's much more cynical than him and does not believe in the idea of the meritocracy because he's been there long enough to realize what it's like.
It's so interesting that you say that, because watching the movie, I thought, okay, I'm a people pleaser. I can succeed here. I'm a good student, right? I'm like, how do you get an A in this class? I'm going to do the things where you get an A. And I was literally sitting in the movie thinking, how would I do this so that I could succeed? But you can't succeed when power is corrupted. Yeah. Because the rules are fungible, right? There is no structure when there's corruption. They don't coincide. Yeah. So, or they don't coexist. So the people running the school were not explicit about their actual responses to the boys in the school or the actual reasons that they were involved with the school, right? Yeah. Which was to make money from selling the food that the school had to feed the boys. They sold the food to other people and pocketed the money. And they sold the boys' labor to other people and pocketed the money. Yeah. They raped and sexually abused the boys. They, lived out their violent impulses on the boys, right? Yeah. Their racist beliefs about black kids.
Yeah. I mean, there are white kids here too, but this is the South in the early 60s, and so they're kept in different...
Segregated.
They're segregated. They're kept in different schools. And, the white kids are treated pretty badly too, but the black kids are treated much worse.
Right. Well, and you had something similar. I don't know the exact ones, but they have also found buried children's bodies in former Indian schools again, with quotes around it, because of, the noxious racism that causes people to treat somebody different from them inhumanely. Yeah. So what are any other aspects of the book that you think landed it on your list. The Underground Railroad wasn't your choice for the list?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of came down to that, and I picked this one over Underground Railroad. I think the thing about Underground Railroad that I didn't like that much was the kind of, which this might be one of the reasons you like it, but there is this sort of magic realism thing that makes the railroad an actual railroad.
I know, I liked that.
And but to me it was like, this story.
It took you out.
It takes you out of the actual story
right.
of what the Underground Railroad was, which was, I thought, more interesting than the magical realism part of it. And this book is really real.
Right.
I mean, it hits you between the eyes.
Too real.
It may be too real, but I think it's a lovable book because it's one of those things that literature does that nothing else does, and that's it gives you empathy.
Yes, it's so important because I didn't go to a school like that. You didn't go to a school like that. And to read a novel from the perspective of someone who was put into this situation, was a victim of this corruption and, racist abuse, then you're like, oh, right? This is an outcome of racist beliefs. This is one of the outcomes of these kinds of beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And this is how it feels to be treated this way. And this is how it does. I mean, I think you're right. That's such an important thing. We read literature, including poetry, for understanding, right? You can read a poem about a broken heart and feel less alone, right? But you also read literature to expand your understanding and your comprehension and your empathy, which is the most, I think that's a very important aspect of reading.
Yeah.
So, and that's why books like this are so meaningful, especially now when there's a lot of rhetoric flying around. Don't let any hit you. And a novel like this can, I think, make a big difference for someone.
Yeah. Another reason why this book really appealed to me was the way it ends. And I'm not going to...
No spoilers.
I'm not going to spoil that by telling, because it's a kind of a shock. But it's one that you feel like, oh my gosh, I should have seen that coming.
Well, and that's something I talk about with students is, if you're going to have a surprise ending, it has to be earned, right? It's glorious when it's a surprise and also, oh, these things were saying this. I thought they were saying that.
Yeah.
And I think that's masterful storytelling. I also think, you remember things. We learn from things that surprise us. We remember things that surprise us. And that can be a good way, I think, for a novel to make just that, an additional impact on our psyches.
Yeah.
Is a meaningful, earned surprise, right?
Yeah.
So, who might not love the Nickel Boys?
Well, if you don't have the stomach for it,
It's rough.
It's could be some rough reading. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I guess the most legitimate way somebody would not like this book.
Yeah. And you're not going to waste time with other reasons.
No.
I think that's a good call. Okay. So if you're viewing, you might see, I just want to introduce Sylvia sleeping on my lap. And if you're listening, you might hear snores from our Cavalier King Charles, who's devoured her treat and is now sleeping. So, all right. Well, what ranking are you giving this novel?
I'm going to put this, since I'm being forced to rank every novel that we talk about.
We're building a list of the 100 novels in order. He had the list, but I was like, I need order. I need sequence. I need order.
Yeah. I prefer to say they're all good.
Well, they're good enough to be on the list.
At this point, I'm going to put it right after the Song of Solomon. I guess they're kind of close together in my brain. So Song of Solomon at this point is number 11.
Okay.
So this would be number 12 on.
And what's
our
after
list. After it comes Wolf Hall.
Oh, and number 13.
At
All
number
right.
13.
Okay, well, number 12, The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Awesome.
And by the way, if you do see the movie, you'll be less struck by the ending as you were, because it's not as clear cut.
There's some opacity there.
Yeah.
I had questions, but I was going to ask you actually, if you've seen the movie, so then you are going to be kind of in on the surprise, so to speak. Is it still worth reading the book?
Well, it's certainly worth reading the book, but if I were you, I would read the book first, because the ending is so kind of astounding.
You're going to get the joy, so to speak. Of
and you won't get it as much from the movie.
Right. Yeah, you don't. It's harder to, like I said, I had questions. So I had to ask Jay, who had read the book, some questions. But anyway, I still really thought the movie was really, really imaginative and really effective. Like they were creative in the great way that served the material.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought it was wonderful. But I think that's true. All right.
All right. So I believe it must be time for Chaos Reader.
All right. Well, I am currently reading one of the New York Times best novels of 2004, All Fours by Miranda July. And I didn't know that she had a new novel. I find myself as a Miranda July completist, which is interesting because she is really kind of a all-around artist, performance artist, writer, filmmaker, and I really enjoy her writing. She has a unique voice that's conversational, kind of casual, incredibly observant, insightful. There's just a cadence to her writing that I really enjoy. I did see on a Facebook group I'm in people complaining about this book and how they hated it. They threw it across the room and gave up on it. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it is a novel about a woman in perimenopause. And it's hard to write an iconoclastic novel about menopause if you are not indeed iconoclastic. So it might not be for everyone.
Or menopausal.
Well, I don't know about that. But there are a lot of very graphic sex scenes in the novel. There's a lot of, she's not shy about that. She doesn't hold back from it. I heard a podcast interview with her, and she said, she had to be very vulnerable to write the book, but she felt it was really important. And I think it is because there's not a lot of fiction about that particular time of life. And also, like I said, I find her voice and writing very charming. So I'm within 100 pages. I'm finishing this book. And I think it's really well done. I can't wait to see what happens. And I think it's not unlike some things that Miranda July went through in her 40s as well. But, fictional characters are their own people. So it's not a memoir. She's a great fiction writer, and it was a National Book Award finalist as well. So I'm not the only one who enjoyed it.
You said 2004. Do you mean 2024?
2024. Sorry. Yes. 2024.
Because you said new book, too.
Yes.
I thought, wow, she must have written it a long time.
No.
But you have met her.
I have met her. I was very fortunate in my MFA program. During my MFA program, she was one of the visiting artists at University of Central Arkansas, where I was getting my MFA. And the grad students got to go to dinner with her before her talk. She is very charming. She and I bonded over our love of the now defunct Tweeds clothing catalog. And something else I really liked about her was that she had in her contract that she had to have a certain period of time alone before her talk. And I was like, introverts unite. Like, I got it. And I thought, that's really smart to make sure that you have what you need. But she was lovely at dinner. She was so friendly. And, she understood the brief. She knew what she was there to do. And I just really I really liked her, and maybe that's part of why I like the book. But I'm not the only one. A lot of people seem to have responded well to it, and I'm really enjoying it. I highly recommend her prose.
Okay.
All right. So, of course, this is the end of the podcast where people either turn it off or they listen to our pleas to write, review, suggest, share. We really love doing the podcast, and we'd like to make sure it gets shared as much as possible. And I think one of the best ways to share our podcast is just to tell somebody you know who loves books. Maybe tell somebody in your book club about our podcast, and let people know about it. And also, our Facebook page, Between the Covers Podcast, is a way we can talk about the podcast afterwards if you disagreed with us. I mean, why wouldn't you? We don't know everything. You can come there and chat. And you can also leave comments on Spotify and et cetera. But those are all good ways to help our podcast get noticed and help us keep going. So we would love it if you would help us. We also want to thank our producer and helper, Jerry Bruno, who's helping us learn how to produce this on our own, which is a big feat. And he's really actually helping us do it. So we are getting Fs, but we are forging ahead.
I think D-.
Yeah, that's right. We're passing. We're passing. So thank you for all your support, and keep it up. And we'll see you next week. Between the Covers.